views expressed on this program are those of the hosts, guests, and callers, and are not necessarily those of this station, its management, or other advertisers. You're listening to Transformation Talk Radio.
Get fired up for Spirit Fire Radio with your hosts, Dorothy, Riddle, and Steve Kramer. Get ready to shine the light on universal spiritual principles and uncover ways that ageless wisdom can guide you in cultivating consciousness in these modern times. Bring purpose to your life through practical spirituality and add to your awareness with Spirit Fire Radio. Now here are your hosts, Dorothy, Riddle, and Steve Kramer.
Hi there. Welcome to Spirit Fire Radio. My name is Steve Kramer, and it is a delight to be with you. I am joined by my lovely co-host, Dr. Dorothy Riddle. Hi, Dorothy.
Hi, Steve. It's great to be here and starting a new month.
It's great to be with you, indeed. And July, for the whole month of July, we are going to be talking about harmlessness. And it just so happens that my co-host wrote an entire book on this theme. And actually, Dorothy, for our listeners, you may be interested to know that really this trilogy of books is how we met. I was so moved by the thorough examination of harmlessness in your book that I originally invited you on to Spirit Fire Radio last year, and it turned into our own show this year, which is so wonderful. So I've been looking really forward to this month and really diving deep into harmlessness and learning quite a bit from you. So, Dorothy, it'd be wonderful maybe before we start the month just to talk a bit about harmlessness and from your perspective, I'd love to hear in your words, why harmlessness for an entire month?
Well, Steve, the thing that's interesting, if you really start looking at the concept of harmlessness, is that we don't, as a collective, as a society, have any extended experience of harmlessness. Harm is so pervasive, which we're going to talk about next week, but it's important to set the frame of what harmlessness actually is. We're as we'll talk more today, we're mainly told what not to do, but we're not told what harmlessness actually is. And it's fine to say do no harm, but what is it that we're not supposed to be doing? So for myself, when I started writing the trilogy, which is the subtitle is Enough for Us All, and the first book is on principles of abundance for the cosmic citizen, which for listeners who don't know the book, it takes quantum physics, life sciences, social sciences, metaphysics, and pulls out 7 basic principles that govern our lives, that describe who we are, how we relate to each other. And then Positive Harmlessness in Practice was the second book. My preoccupation has been for years, how do we end violence, and especially violence against women and girls, which is the number one human rights violation in the world. We don't talk about it that much that way because I think we feel a little bit helpless in terms of what to do. But that's why I wanted to start this month with harmlessness, so we really understand what it is, Steve, before we get into harm, which we're much more familiar with, I think.
Well, for sure. And if listeners just even feel into that or just think about the experiences perhaps over the weekend, a movie you saw, or perhaps even a group situation you were in, or time in the car, it is really something that one could say with such surety as you do that we don't see examples of harmlessness, or harmlessness isn't discussed or as apparent, that we actually need to define it and we need to talk about it and bring it to the forefront. Because if one thinks back even about their weekend, I'm sure that situations come forward quicker that involve violence or harm in a way. And so indeed, it is imperative that we actually explore harmlessness. I feel like even following a month on goodwill, we had such wonderful conversations last month speaking about goodwill, and that we're almost going a little bit deeper because it is imperative that one understand harmlessness if goodwill is going to be a way of life for all of us, correct?
Absolutely. And what's interesting is if you look in the dictionary, you see a definition which I think is at the root of some of our problems with the concept of harmlessness, because harmlessness is defined as not able or likely to cause harm. And while that's accurate, what it implies is a kind of innocuousness or incapacity. We say, "Oh, that poor man, he's harmless," So we tend to equate harmlessness with weakness, not with strength. And then what happens is that if we see harmlessness and goodwill associated with it as a lack of potency, then violence becomes the sign of strength. And I think we see this very, very clearly in our current U.S. president, where President Trump will say, anybody hits me, I'll hit back 10 times harder, which is actually not what New Testament Christianity is all about. It's about turning the other cheek. So this whole idea that harmlessness really equates to a lack of potency, I think, contributes to our inability to wrap our arms around it, so to speak.
Well, and there's something interesting about not able or likely to cause harm. It's as if harmlessness is the exception, that we would take it for granted that harm will occur, and you're not likely to cause harm. It's very interesting that it would not be defined as without harm or given even fuller description.
Right. And then we have a kind of companion piece in the Buddhist or Hindu definition of ahisma, which means literally without violence. Again, harmlessness being defined in relation to violence.
Right.
It's a lack of violence as opposed to anything proactive or positive.
I look forward to really diving into that idea of what is harm and what is violence. I know we will do that on future shows, because there are so many ways that we can harm that we don't even realize. It may not be conscious to so many of us. And again, then when you link potency, or you link this sort of idea of bravado or even of success, it becomes very much about the individual and what effort I put forward without any, it doesn't matter the consequence. I think that we'll come to see throughout all of these shows that there are certain actions and certain ways of being that we may not even be aware of that subtly cause harm. So it's really about shifting our awareness and really exploring this theme of harmlessness so we can get to know it as a way to adopt it, into our everyday life, for sure.
And if you think about how we signal that we've been successful, it's a fist in the air, or it's a beating the chest. They're actually quite violent images.
Good point. Indeed. You have a quote. I'm sitting with the book in front of me, which, as I look, has lots of earmarks and lots of Post-its. But you start with a quote that says, if you can help others, and if you cannot do that, at least do not harm. And that's from the Dalai Lama. So starting out with, if you can help others, make that your way of life. So I find that harmlessness is really also linked to this idea of right action as well. And so much of what we've talked about thus far on the radio show, I think of the 7 principles when we talked about humanity, that are your actions actually creating a better life within this one life? Are you, even with the Hope Show, are you generating optimism with your actions, with your words, with your daily living? Is optimism generated? If you look back on your weekend or the end of the day, do you say, somehow did I generate optimism either within my own mind or with, for somebody else? And certainly with right speech and right action. So, when we apply this concept of harmlessness, I find that when I ask myself, is it gentle and is it kind? It seems to be a mantra that has worked well for me, that if it's gentle, for the most part, there's not harm done, and certainly is it kind.
But see, just the words that you use, Steve, I would agree with you absolutely. And yet many people would take gentle to be impotent. Mm-hmm. You see what I mean? So it's that same issue that somehow, in order to be effective in the world, in order to be potent in the world, there has to be this energy that is a kind of a substrata of violence, even if it's not violence itself. But I think, so to me, I avoid that word, not because I don't agree with it, but just because of the possibility of misinterpretation. But I think we can go back to the three that we talked about with right speech. Is it kind? Is it necessary? Is it true? There's those kinds of measures that we can use.
Yes. Well, I just going back to that word gentle just for a second, and being a man. Certainly when you bring that word up, in a way, if you are able to make gentleness an aspect of your truth and a way of your being, just the very fact that people don't expect, and it's sad to say, but that you don't ultimately link this idea of being gentle as actually a powerful choice in a situation. So I find there's a reframing that goes on. I will often talk about gentleness and gentle breath and gentle actions. And I think just even, as sort of almost sexist as it sounds coming from a male voice, it's actually quite effective in having people stop and ponder, wow, okay, gentleness. He's really considering gentleness. It works. Mm-hmm. We're going to go to a break. So, Dorothy, when we get back, I look forward to continuing our discussion on harmfulness. We'll be back after these words. Mm-hmm.
Are you ready to thread your life with intuition? Intuit Apparel can help you do just that. This is not just about a piece of clothing. This is about a movement, an awakening, and staying centered in life. Your life. Intuitive and host of the radio show Get Into It, Lynn Brown, was given this image with the intention of a clothing line designed to represent the essence of life itself. Visit intuitapparel.com now and wear your intuition with pride.
Do you feel that there's a bigger, better life for you? Is there anything holding you back from living the life you were meant to live? If you'd like to find your life's true purpose and calling, join the world's foremost authority on primal spirituality, David Carshare, in Becoming a Sun Radio, emotional and spiritual intelligence for a happy, fulfilling life. Tune in once a month to Becoming a Sun Radio with David Carshare on The Dr. Pat Show and Transformation Talk Radio. For more information, visit davidcarshare.com today.
Brand consultant Jen Morgan is here with Radically Distinct Radio to help you take control of your future and maximize your brand's power to produce results. Whether you're an individual trying to reinvent yourself and launch a new venture, or you're an executive trying to reposition your company to modernize your sales and marketing programs, Jen Morgan and the RAD Method empower you to play to your strengths and show up in the world as your most powerful brand. To learn more, go to jenmorgan.com. That's Jen with 2 N's Morgan.com, or call 206-972-5366.
Chris Stanis is a spiritual leader and healer and teaches a course on how you can transform your life through a meditation and healing system that will manifest your spirit's dreams. She manifested the Women of Wisdom Conference, the Women of Wisdom book, and this radio show. And she can show you how to change your life too. Are you ready? Visit the website and contact her at voicesofwomentoday.com. That's voicesofwomentoday.com.
Curious about the meaning of life? Do you want to deepen your spiritual practice? The School for Esoteric Studies offers online training to spiritual seekers from all paths of life and individual coaching. Our courses synthesize Eastern and Western spiritual traditions based on meditation, study, and service applied to everyday life. The school also organizes group meditations each year to benefit humanity. Whether you're just beginning to reflect on the spiritual side of your life or are a more experienced spiritual seeker, the school warmly welcomes you to join our group. To learn more about our courses and services, please visit esotericstudies.net. That's esotericstudies.net.
Welcome back to Spirit Fire Radio. During the break, Dorothy and I were having a bit of a laugh. It seems that before we went to break, I said we will come back and continue the discussion on harmfulness as opposed to harmlessness. It seems that word is really ingrained in our psyche, huh, Dorothy?
It is. It's much easier to say because we say it a lot. We don't say harmlessness as much. So it doesn't trip off the tongue as easily.
And, you know, maybe that's it's a cue for our listeners to try to use the word harmlessness. Can you use that word this week?
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. I just wanted to add something to what you were talking about in terms of the concept of gentleness. I hope my brother doesn't mind, but he is a man who is 6'8", and so you can imagine, you know, he's tall, he's big. He could seem very imposing, and yet he's one of the gentlest people that I know. And I always, you know, when there are these conversations about, you know, what does it mean to be a man or masculine, I always think of him as a wonderful, positive example.
Mm. Well, if I could...
Go ahead.
Yes. I wanted to just say you just reminded me of a story. When I was young, I had a really good friend who was much taller than me. I'm sure he is 6'4", 6'5", if not 6'6", and he lived right across the street from me. And a bunch of us were on our skateboards, and another friend of ours put their foot underneath the wheel. We were sitting on the skateboards going down our hill, and of course that makes you fly off. And his name was Jim Key. He was a great guy. He thought that I did it, and he came over and he popped me in the jaw, as kids will do. But I'd never been hit before in my life, and I got hit in the face. And I said, Jim, why did you do that? I would never hit you. And he said, why did you do that? And I said, well, I didn't do that. But I sort of was like, that's besides the point. I would never hit you. I would never hurt you. And I was so taken aback that he hit me. It stayed with him forever. When we were teenagers and older, he still says to me that day, taught him this lesson about punching people, about resorting to hitting someone. And it served me well all through high school because I was a little guy and I actually was quite gentle all through high school. And we were Kramer and Key. So we both had Ks. We were in the same homeroom. And he was this tall guy who always had my back. He always made sure that there was a sort of a field of gentleness around me. And if anything got too heated, he was ready to stop, to just sort of step in and make sure it calmed down. So, gentleness works sometimes. Yeah.
Well, I'm going to move us to another way that we think about harmlessness, and that's what many in the Western world know as the golden rule, or treat others as you want to be treated. And what's interesting to me, or what was interesting as I did the research for this book, was how many different religious traditions have the same kind of saying. So I'd like to read some of them, Steve, because it's really quite remarkable. So we have in the Baha'i faith, if thine eyes be turned towards justice, choose thou for thy neighbor that which thou choosest for thyself. Or Buddhism, hurt not others in ways that you yourself would find hurtful. Or Confucianism, do not unto others that you would not have them do unto you. Or Hinduism, this is the sum of duty. Do not do to others what would cause pain if done to you. Or Islam, none of you truly believes until he wishes for his brother what he wishes for himself. And then Judaism, what is hateful to you, do not to your fellow man. This is the law. The rest is commentary. And there are others, but I think that gives us a flavor of how much this whole idea of treating others the way we want to be treated runs through religious faith. And yet, the challenge to me about that way of defining things is it is self-focused, right? It's a leveraging of self-interest. Think about yourself. What is it that you don't want to have happen to you? And then use that to guide your behavior to other people, as opposed to, in other words, we're still not at a positive, proactive definition of harmlessness.
Right. But it does seem to be where most people need to start. Even on the spiritual path, that you've got to start with yourself. We hear that all the time. Until you learn to love yourself, you cannot love another. So we find that, I find all the time in ways in which we evolve, that somehow it starts with ourselves. But what's interesting, Dorothy, if I might add, that, I have this page as one of the pages that's earmarked, because it is really interesting that it's not only something that moves through these spiritual traditions, it seems to be actually, in the way it's written for many of these, the basis of spiritual tradition, in that, for Islam to say none of you truly believes until he wishes for his brother what he wishes for himself. And certainly in Judaism to say that this is law and that all of the rest is commentary. And it basically means that, again, until we understand that we have got to learn to live with each other, to support each other, to help each other, to grow with each other. And that, as you talk so much about in your first book, is really the principle that we are part of the one life. We are interdependent, interconnected. And until we understand that, basically, we are in a place that limits our evolution and the evolution of all of humanity, really, actually.
Absolutely. Yeah. And the positive about that particular perspective is the universality. That it's, in other words, it's the same standard applied to everybody.
Right.
And that is very positive. Now, the challenge, Steve, comes with how broadly do we apply that, right? Do we apply? I mean, I think from my experience, it's a stretch to apply that across all people, all nationalities, all ethnic groups of humans. But what about the non-human person, the animals that are highly intelligent, very social, that demonstrate a moral code in the way in which they behave towards others? So do we extend there? Do we extend to plants? We know that plants are, again, intelligent. They're highly social. They communicate with each other. They try to defend each other from harm, or at least signal that harm is on its way. And then we get to the earth. It's a different way of looking at the environmental issues. Are we being harmful when we do things like fracking? Or are we willing to behave in a way that is harmless?
Yes, and it speaks of really getting to know the other. And, we sometimes, we don't want to limit that to only another human being, such as me telling my friend Jim Key, I would never hit you, and therefore you never hit me, and him learning on some level some sort of lesson about, okay, we really are truly friends, and I've learned something about this person. I can respect his stance, and therefore not only might I think before I hit somebody else, but I actually probably shouldn't be kidding anyone. But once we get to know, I think it's that word, a bit of that word reverence, that once we get to know another person deeply, that, I'm sorry, that then we can sort of act in a way that would be harmless. So there's a bit of reverence going on that we can see beyond once we start to get to know the earth, or we get to know plant life, we get to know the animal kingdom deeply. I believe then we can act in a way, that we can broaden our idea of what is harmlessness.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's part of the challenge. That's part of, when I say we don't have a shared experience of harmlessness, how many hours of our day, or even minutes of our day, are focused on that kind of, how am I treating someone else? Is it truly harmless, the way in which I'm behaving? Am I doing harm, or am I not doing harm?
Right. So there's so much about really observing ourselves as well.
Yeah. So it's, part of it is the filter through which we think about things. Is harmlessness the filter that we use when we are relating to the rest of the world? And that's actually what our moral compass is about, if you think about it, which we talked about last month, the moral compass, that indicates goodwill, right relations, a commitment to the common good.
But I find that leads me to want to ask you about positive harmlessness, in that your title is not only about harmlessness in practice, but it's about positive harmlessness in practice. So we're going to go to a break, and when we get back, let's talk about that, this word positive that you've inserted in front of the word harmlessness. We'll be right back.
What is a brilliant culture, and how do we create them? Why are they important? Claudette Rowley has created a breakthrough 5-step process to help you align your culture with your business strategy for exceptional results. Looking for a culture that drives organizational excellence? Listen to Cultural Brilliance Radio, the second and fourth Friday of each month at 10 a.m. Pacific and 1 p.m. Eastern on Transformation Talk Radio. To learn more or work with Claudette, visit culturalbrilliance.com.
Thrive is what we experience when our mind, body, and soul operate as one. When we thrive, we excel on all levels. Thrive is the mindset that matters. It is essential to our being. Have you ever found yourself looking for the instruction manual on how to thrive? You'll find everything you need to help you feel strong, powerful, and peaceful in your own body. So don't waste any more time. Visit thrivebyjen.com today.
Hi, I'm Steve Kramer of Spirit Fire Radio, and I believe that meditation changes everything. It leads us in the direction of greater well-being, and that's a fact. I struggled with meditation for years. I understood the principles, but I found it hard to incorporate them into my everyday life. Spirit Fire's meditation practice changed that. It's called the Practice of Living Awareness, and it's taught in 14 steps. These are 14 tools that I can use in any moment, on and off the cushion. Steps like smile, flow, and ground of being support my clarity of mind while I'm navigating the ups and downs of modern life. That's why it's called the Practice of Living Awareness. If you'd like to add meditation to your daily experience, the Practice of Living Awareness is free, online, and it's suited for any level of practitioner. Visit spiritfire.com for more information. And be sure to check out Spirit Fire's meditation retreats in Western Massachusetts. It's all there at spiritfire.com.
Get ready to experience Truth Talk Radio with host Deb Acker. Tune in to Truth Talk Radio each Wednesday at 3 p.m. Pacific on TransformationTalkRadio.com to illuminate the truth in your daily life as you experience life, love, and abundance from a whole new perspective. This hit show will leave you feeling lighter and bring you into a place of infinite possibilities every day in every way. Visit TruthTalkRadioshow.com for upcoming transformative topics and guests.
Tune in to the hit show Mouthing Off with Chef Rossi. Chef Rossi mouths off about different subjects in pursuit of breaking down walls and opening up your minds. She and Dr. Pat banter back and forth, taking from the headlines of the day on subjects that reach beyond what goes on in the world into your hearts. And go to theragingskillet.com to find out more and let Chef Rossi know what's on your mind.
Welcome back to Spirit Fire Radio. My name is Steve Kramer, and I'm joined with my wonderful co-host, Dr. Dorothy Riddle. And we've been talking about harmlessness, and we're going to continue to talk about harmlessness throughout July. And just before the break, we were talking about Dorothy's book called Positive Harmlessness in Practice. So what I find wonderful about this trilogy of books is that the first book is on principles of abundance, and you realize that we live in an abundant world. And I came to understand that those who feel we don't live in an abundant world are really full of fear, and the fear leads to, I would say, not so positive choices and can lead to harm. So it's wonderful that within the series that we move from abundance to harmlessness. So, Dorothy, was that an intention? And I'd love to hear about positive harmlessness. You have the word positive inserted there, positive harmlessness in practice.
Mm-hmm. Yes, it was intentional. I wrote the two books in parallel to each other, recognizing that I needed to. That the principles book needed to come first to set a framework so that we could then zero in on the issue of harmlessness. And the reason I put positive in the title is to emphasize that idea of a positive choice, of a potency, of something, of a proactive intention, as opposed to just a passive kind of lack of harm, which is what these other definitions that we've talked about imply in a certain way. So it's not that passivity of not doing harm. It is, which is the way a lot of these are framed, do no harm. But it is the positive choice of what it is that you need to do. And I hope we'll talk later in the month when we talk about, how we strengthen our ability to be harmless, about the whole process of noticing what we're doing and being aware of the feeling that we bring to that, and then the kind of action that we take. So all of that has a certain potency to it. And I'll just preview the fact that if you look at any research literature on emotions, you'll find that almost all the emotions that are researched are negative. They're not positive. So again, trying to get at the positive. What is it that we can do? What is it that we should do? And to me, Steve, a core piece of that, which we talked about last month when we were talking about goodwill, a core piece is that moving beyond self-interest to a focus on the common good, where we're able to say, this, while this may not be my first choice, this is what will work for most people. And I did a lot of work in negotiation, cross-cultural negotiation, and that's a basic principle, right? You need to find something that everybody can buy into, everybody can agree to. So it's that, what's best for all of us, not just me, what do I want? And if you're not going to do what I want, then, I'm going to knock you out or punish you in some kind of way.
Boy, cooperation, which is a huge part of that first book. I find it interesting, even I was hearing you say the word lack of harm, that the word lack is in there, which is in conscious distinction to abundance, right? A lack of harm. And that had me pondering, well, okay, if we're talking about lack of harm or harmlessness, what would you say is the opposite of harm? Or what would be another word, rather, a synonym for harmlessness if we took the word less out of it, right? If we wanted to not use a word that even had the word harm in it, I'm wondering if you could come up, would it be goodwill?
Well, I think goodwill is a good candidate. I think what came to my mind immediately, but it's not a clear opposite, is joy. Joy is a very expansive emotion, an expansive state. It's not specific enough to really offset harm, but someplace in that arena of another way of thinking about it is, if we think about what's in the UN Universal Declaration of Human Rights, the two rights that are stated right at the beginning are the right to dignity, the right to respect. So I think both of those, particularly respect, is something that is an offset to harm. I'd have to think about that more, but if I always behaved in a respectful manner, would it be possible for me to be harmful? I'm not sure it would.
Well, that's wonderful. I might add that to my, is it gentle, is it kind, is it respectful? I like that. And is it dignified, right? I mean, I see that they are all actually aligned. And, without being woo-woo, it really comes down to love. It comes down to a broader approach and a broader understanding, a deeper understanding to love, meaning, as you would say, interconnected and interdependent. It would be all of those principles actually bring us back to love. And it brings us back to this idea of a group awareness, of not being a sort of a personal kind of attached love, but more of a universal love, which leads us to an understanding of those concepts of being that we are all interconnected, which says, as I do unto you, I do unto myself. So love, I think, is a word, if we can take it out of its sort of emotional context and look at it as from the point of view, a higher point of view of energetic, that we see that it just supports interconnectivity.
Well, it's interesting that the Native American Great Law of Peace is respect for all life is the foundation. So it's clearly respect. But I want to share something with regard to dignity that really struck me this past week. I was in a situation where, actually, I was on a cruise, and it was an all women's cruise. We were having a lovely time, and one of the women that we had dinner with one night said that she had the experience of being on a Holland America cruise 1 week when it was all women, and then the next week when it was a mix of genders. And she said what was interesting was the behavior of the staff, that in the all-women week, the staff were friendly, they were laughing, they were having a great time. And one of the things that she noticed that was different was that people, the passengers, were talking to the staff, calling them by name, looking them in the eye. In other words, treating them with dignity. Whereas in the other week, she said the majority of the passengers treated them like they were robotic parts of the equipment, that they were there to perform certain tasks. And the staff behavior was very formal, very appropriate, but, not at all the same. And as we were getting off, I said something to one of the staff as we were leaving. I said, you're going to get a different set of passengers next week. And he said, in a very kind of discouraged voice, yes.
what would you think is the reason behind that? Like, why would you think that would be so?
Well, I think in any group, people follow other people. So what I attribute it to is that there many women, because of our socialization, know what it's like to be objectified, know what it's like to be dismissed, know what it's like to be treated, poorly. Now, not every woman responds by treating other people with respect or with dignity, but I think that if there's a critical mass of women that do that, then others kind of follow along, because that becomes the norm. Whereas those who are in the majority, who are in control, the group that's in control, they don't have to pay attention to other people. There's lots of research on how women, although women are actually a technical majority, exhibit behaviors similar to, ethnic groups that are minority groups, in terms of being very observant of what it is that the male is going to do for self-protection, right? Pay much more attention than the male pays to the female.
And I also wondered if it was a bit of also when an environment becomes non-traditional, people observe more because they're not in their sort of learned ways. And as we keep talking about harm and the way we use harm, and it being just matter of fact that it is, as we'll talk next week about the pervasiveness of harm, that becomes sort of rote for all of us. And as we're in a sort of a traditional group environment, we adopt those ways. And that I wonder if it's also, I'm following what you're saying, but I wonder if it's also this sort of non-traditional environment that allows people to sort of be more creative and be more observant and try something new, try a new way in a sense. Could that be so, maybe?
It could be. The other place I'm not sure I want to go just because it's stereotypic is that part of the socialization of women is to be nurturing, right? To be supportive of others. Again, not that all women are, but and so when you get them en masse, then that's one of the characteristics that would be likely to be reinforced. But it was very, from what was described to me, very marked, the difference.
Beautiful. Well, it sounds like fun. That sounds wonderful, Ray. I'm glad you had a
really
was
fun.
Delightful. Yeah. And it sounds creative is what I like. It sounds new and it sounds fresh and it sounds creative. And that's why I sort of went to in the non-traditional way, because I thought, well, anytime we're in a really collective space that feels new and we get excited, we get positive, we see that there's options. Actually, we get creative and fun. At least I do. So it sounds like it was a great trip.
Yeah, but one of the things that it underscored for me, just very quickly, is again that if we want to be positively harmless, it does involve a watchfulness of our own behavior, a constant watchfulness, because it doesn't necessarily come automatically.
And wonderful to be watched in that regard.
Yes.
That others learn, right?
Yes.
May we all be observing not only, ourselves and our actions and the repercussions, but others and our environment around us. We're going to go to a break, Dorothy. We're at that time. We'll be right back.
Yes.
Gifted intuitive healer and spiritual teacher Sarah Luce brings her unique style to the hit show Small Steps, Big Breakthrough Radio on TransformationTalkRadio.com. Tune in each month as Sarah turns reality on end and shows us how to experience expansive results with simple yet powerful steps. Expect an enlightening bend on what you currently believe is possible. For show details and upcoming topics, visit saraloos.com. That's SARALOOS.com.
Awareness is universal. Establishing a living awareness through meditation brings peaceful, healthy, and creative well-being into your everyday life. The practice of living awareness, Spirit Fire's own meditation practice, is built on this belief and is designed for every level of practitioner. Each year, Spirit Fire hosts living awareness meditation retreats that allow you to explore the practice in depth at our retreat center in beautiful Western Massachusetts. Introduce yourself to meditation and the practice at the Foundation's retreat. Attend, in silence, a silent meditation retreat focused on mindfulness, presence, and nature, or be engaged with the meditation sittings themselves at the Deepening Retreat. Start adding to your awareness and attend a meditation retreat designed to cultivate consciousness in your everyday life. For details on attending a Living Awareness meditation retreat, visit upcoming events at www.spiritfire.com.
Are you feeling stagnant or blocked in your love life, career, health, or finances? Experiencing difficulty focusing or setting and achieving goals? Tune in to Spiritual Diagnostics Radio with psychic visionary healers Carol Dorian and Justice Welling. Discover the cause and effect of unwanted patterns in life. Tune in every Tuesday at 12 p.m. Pacific on Transformation Talk Radio. For more information, visit spiritualdeed.com.
Be you plus live your purpose equals joy. That's the motto of Unstuck Joy with Vicki Todd. Vicki believes you were born with gifts that are meant to make the world brighter. Each show will feature an art visioning journal prompt to help you create your way to soul clarity. If you're ready to get unstuck and create more joy, this show is for you. Tune in every month on Transformation Talk Radio. For more information, visit VickiWorldArt.com.
Tune in to The Jen Royster Show, intuitive guidance to inspire your life, each Thursday at 8 a.m. Pacific and 11 a.m. Eastern on TransformationTalkRadio.com. This amazing show is an inspirational hour that will take you on an epic metaphysical journey to discover the spiritual approach to life's greatest challenges. Dr. Jen is an internationally known intuitive counselor, spiritual teacher, and energy healer. Call in for intuitive readings and visit JenRoyster.com for more information.
Welcome back to Spirit Fire Radio. It's great to be with you and great to be sharing this show with Dr. Dorothy Riddle. Dorothy, let's tell them a bit about our organizations. I'll start. Spirit Fire. Great. Spirit Fire is an educational nonprofit, and we are focused on educating people on the importance of spirituality and generating consciousness in their everyday life. And we do that through our own meditation program called The Practice of Living Awareness. We're actually about to start a brand new round. It's a 14-step program. It's online, 14 weeks, one step a week, and we're going to start next week with a brand new round. So if you're interested in meditation and you would like to give the Practice of Living Awareness a go, just go to spiritfire.com and click on the meditation link, and I'll be leading those meditations 3 a week for 14 weeks, so I hope you'll join us. Dorothy?
Great. Well, Steve, yes. So I am with the School for Esoteric Studies. You can find out more information about us at esotericstudies.net. And we also are an educational nonprofit. Our focus is on esoteric discipleship training, which is deepening your spiritual practice in order to be of service in the world. And we place a great deal of emphasis on service. Our curriculum is 3-part. It's meditation, study, and service, and it's done by correspondence. And we realized a couple of years ago that while we talk about goodwill, we were not necessarily practicing goodwill towards other spiritual groups. We noticed that there tended to be some competition between the groups. And so we set out purposely to collaborate with other spiritual groups. And we have a part of our website dedicated to intergroup collaboration, and it lists the various organizations that we do have formal collaborations with. And I was absolutely delighted when Spirit Fire agreed to do this collaboration. So the Spirit Fire Radio is a formal collaboration between the School for Esoteric Studies at esotericstudies.net and Spirit Fire.
Beautiful. It's a process, right, Dorothy? I mean,
Absolutely.
It comes back to this idea of harmlessness, that it's always a process that we have to engage. And listeners, that trilogy, if you will, that trifecta of study, meditation, and service. If you can dedicate any part of your day, any part of your week, any time in your life to meditation, to study, and to service, you are evolving into one who engages in harmlessness, right? I mean, you are then really finding a way to move along the spiritual path that recognizes these concepts that we have to cooperate, that if we would like to see this world be a better place, we have to understand that we are all connected. But it's a process of undoing some things and expanding upon other things. So I look forward to this whole month, because I know we're going to go deep into these ideas of harm, and how do we undo that in our day-to-day? How do we undo that in our lives and therefore shape a better world?
Absolutely, Steve. And I'd like to refer back to a quote that we've referenced before, but that I think is so important as we're talking about the concept of harmlessness, and that is that we are not humans having a spiritual experience. We are spiritual beings having a human experience. So as we learn to behave in a harmless manner, as we learn to embrace each other with respect, treat each other with dignity, we are demonstrating who we really are. It's not we're becoming something different. What we're doing is we're coming home to who we really are.
Yes. Well, and Dorothy, what I've loved so much about our work here and what you've brought to our listeners' attention, to my attention, is exactly summed up in the title of this book, Positive Harmlessness in Practice. That it's not only enough that we come back to who we are, but we then have the responsibility of acting on that, of putting that in practice, of actually so many times, right, in our conversations, Dorothy, you've mentioned situations where it's not enough just to stand by and see it. It's not enough in this instance, ... that we really have to be proactive. And I know that we're going to go into that on future shows of that it's not enough in certain instances just to say, I will do no harm, but we've got to actually bring others to that spiritual core. We've got to create a knowingness amongst our fellow human beings that they are spiritual beings and this is a human experience. And how do we make the most of that human experience? And hopefully that experience is increasingly with less violence and less harm.
Yes, and to me, Steve, one of the threads that I think will run throughout this month, if not this year, is that shift from self-interest to a commitment to the common good. That, to me, is one of the ways of describing the maturation process that we go, and we see this also in terms of what we know from quantum physics, that while we may experience ourselves as unique and separate individuals, we're actually energetically part of this huge cosmos, energetically connected to everyone, actually, to everything in the cosmos. And so as we come to really internalize that and really sense, especially like if you stand out, if you look up into the night sky, you see all of these other bodies of light, and try to experience the fact that you are connected to all of that what you're seeing in that darkness is a very vibrant, energetic field, ocean of energy of which you are part. To the extent that we can shift from just ourselves to that feeling of connection, that's so important. And, as you've said yourself, when we recognize our connection to others, it will stop us from being violent.
Yes.
And that's, just footnote here, the third book in the trilogy is called Moving Beyond Duality, because my personal belief is that it's that objectification, the creating of an us and a them, that allows us to do violence to the them. So we need to really, really focus on the fact that we are all interconnected. And we have many very strong pressures in our political environment right now in the opposite direction, in the us-them direction. So it's even more important that we work on that sense of connection.
And not only when you talk about the night sky, it's not only taking refuge in that, but realizing that we are creating the now. Yes, we are connected to the vastness, but there is something so integral to every choice we make, that we are creating that field. We are an aspect of it, and we are a co-creator of the very vibration that is that field. So, Dorothy, we're out of time. We just have a few seconds left. So if you don't mind, I'm just going to wrap it up quick. And I'm going to tell people, if you have any questions or you'd like comments and you have anything you'd like us to bring up on air about harmlessness, you can send an email to spiritfireradio@spiritfire.com. Next week, we are going to talk about the pervasiveness of harm. And it is going to be a very interesting show. I'm so sure of it. So we hope you'll join us. Thanks so much for just being you, Dorothy.
It's a joy to talk with you, Steve.
Indeed. All right, listeners, thanks for joining us. We'll see you next week.
Thank you for listening to Spirit Fire Radio. Tune in each Wednesday at 9 a.m. Pacific, 12 noon Eastern for your weekly guide to purposeful living and practical spirituality. Join hosts Steve Kramer and Dorothy Riddle as they shine the light on universal spiritual principles and uncover ways that ageless wisdom can guide you in cultivating consciousness in your everyday life. Add to your awareness with Spirit Fire Radio. To learn more, visit spiritfireradio.com.